a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, guys, Geoff Drumm comes back to give us a Mason's perspective of Freemasonry. Now, on this one, guys, we talk about the order's intentions, or the fraternity's intentions. My apologies, Geoff. My apologies. His perspective on atrocities perpetrated using Masonic symbolism, as well as just an awesome back and forth with a Freemason. I mean, how often do you get to sit there and talk to somebody like that, and they'll just answer your questions, which was really cool. So, wanted to thank Geoff for coming by. Make sure that you check all the ways to find him located down in the show notes. In those very same show notes, you can find all the ways to find us as well. expandingrealitypodcast.com is the first one that comes to mind. That's probably the best one because it'll link you to everything else. That's also where you can sign up to become an expansive insider, and that's the best way to support the show. Also, value for value model going on here. So if you'd like to do that, there is a link down there that reads support the mission, and that's how you do that. All right, guys, so let's get to this incredibly cool and just awesome and mysterious conversation with Geoff Drumm. Geoff Drumm, back, hanging out. And we were just talking here about how what's cool about having you on, man, and this is the third time you're on, which I'm super grateful, dude, that you just wanted to come hang out, is it's like having you on as a new guest. It's a totally different Geoff Drumm that we're talking to here today because you have amazing presentations. You do incredible work on the pyramids that I talk to strangers about all the time in real life. And, and now we're going to speak about something completely different because you and I speak quite a bit off camera here and we've become pretty good friends. And so, we've talked about a lot, and I wanted to bring you in as another part of you to show, some other stuff that you do. So we can skip all the intros and shit like that. So let's just do this. So we're going to talk about Masons because of your interest in them, and we'll get to know that a little bit more. But let me just ask you
more than interest. Let me go ahead and spoil my Masonic credentials here, right? And give everybody the full reveal.
Yeah, please.
So my name is Geoffrey Drumm, and I am a Freemason, which that may come as some surprise to some of you, may not be that big of a surprise to others of you who know me pretty well. And so in terms of my Masonic credentials, and one of the first things that I did when I told you that I was a Freemason, I showed you my dues cards, right, for multiple different organizations of which I am a member. So that's really one of the only ways that you can actually verify that someone is a Freemason is if you literally see their dues card and that they are a current paying member in good standing. So I think we've kind of discussed that there's kind of a tree of Freemasonry, right? That starts at the beginning and then it branches out into multiple different organizations. So I have multiple different titles in multiple different organizations within the Freemasonic tree. So we start at the beginning with something called the Blue Lodge, which is the first 3 degrees of Masonry. And that's where you become a Master Mason. So within the Blue Lodge, I am a 3rd degree Master Mason. And I am the current worshipful master of my lodge, which is essentially the president of the local lodge organization. So there is no higher ranking officer within the local Blue Lodge Masonic system than yours truly. I'm as high as it gets.
Now, how much pussy would you say you get from that fact? On an average? Zero.
There
It's
is
a male
zero
fraternity, right?
Associated with Freemasonry.
Yeah.
There's lots of old men, but no women.
That's interesting. Then how much butt pussy do you get off of
that? Being said, I mean, chicks,
credential?
they're pretty interested in the fact that I'm involved with something that has such an antique and exceptional reputation. Well, depending on who you speak to, but it's more so the antique tradition and the integrity with which Freemasons represent themselves, which is the impressive thing to women, right? It's the fact that I'm the leader of that organization, that I'm shit, I had to do some math real quick, 37 years old, and I'm already the worshipful master of the lodge. So that's a huge title and an honor in and of itself that I've been voted in and have gone through all of the Masonic chairs to get to the chair of worshipful master. That's not something that happens arbitrarily. And it's a huge privilege and an honor. And I look back at like George Washington was the worshipful master of his lodge. So I hold the same title that George Washington once held. So that's very, very cool. And something that if you knew me 10 years ago, I never, ever thought that I would get to this point in my life when I was a member of something like this and this much of a significant participating member in all of that.
Yeah, and it's changed you. You know, it's like people who pick up a hobby like karate or something, you know, because it provides a lot of discipline. You get to, you know, step out of your cubicle and do something completely different. And then you ascend pretty quick because you've got a strong interest in it. So it's called worshipful master is the title.
That is the term, right? So I can give you the titles of all the officers in the lodge, right? It starts with the Tyler, and then you have your junior and senior deacons. You have your stewards. You have junior and senior wardens. You have a treasurer. You have a secretary, and then you have the worshipful master or the president. And now pretty much all organizations, you know, whether it be a bureaucratic government organization or a chamber of commerce or a business organization, they all have these same sort of members. You have a presiding officer, you have a treasurer, you have a secretary, you have different members of the leadership structure of that group. So it's very similar in Freemasonry. And a lot of the stuff that we have in our current governmental structure comes from the organization of Freemasonry.
You know, but something that's interesting as you're running through the list here is that, yes, you do have a hierarchical structure. It's an organization like anything else. You file taxes. Well, you don't have to pay them, right? You just have to let folks know how much money you're bringing in, wink, wink. So, you know, what's interesting about this, though, is as you're listing the titles, you've got deacons, you've got wardens, you've got worshipful masters, you've got secretaries and officers. Now, what's interesting is these are, yes, nomenclatures, but they're nomenclatures from a variety of different disciplines and modalities and institutions. So you're talking deacons from church, you're talking wardens from prisons, and worshipful masters from enslavement systems. I mean, it's just interesting that the nomenclature chosen for the various ranks isn't like secretary or officer 1, officer 2, officer 3. The theme of them is interesting. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. So I will say that. So the word worshipful master has absolutely nothing to do with slavery. The words deacons have nothing to do with the church. And these titles all predate the establishment of all of those organizations.
Right. But one could, looking in it, maybe say that's an interesting choice of nomenclature for your titles is all.
Sure.
And draw some
to call someone worshipful and to be addressed as worshipful, which is what people call me, right? Members of the Masonic fraternity will address me as worshipful or worshipful master, which is a very very unusual thing to be called. And it's certainly not appropriate. And I don't like people calling me that out in public, right? When I see brothers out in public and they're like, "Oh, hey, what's up, worshipful?" I'm like, you know, just fucking call me Geoff.
It's fucking
don't
gross,
call me worshipful out in public.
Well, it's nasty.
It's a term of respect, right? It's because of the position that you hold within the fraternity and the duties that you have performed to get there as a service to the fraternity at large, right? It takes a lot of work to get up to the role of worshipful master, and it's a very respected position. So that's more of a term of endearment and recognition than any sort of So the worshipful master, right? There's no sorts of tiers. Everybody is on the same level. And this goes back to some of the tools and the symbolism of Freemasonry. And everything in the Freemasonic organization has direct lineage to the organization of stone masonry, right? So ancient stone masons had an organization that was like a guild or labor union, right? Of stone masons, right? They provided insurance, widows support, orphan support, bank loans, all these sort of group protective services that were designed for members of that. It's very much like a labor union.
Yeah,
right?
like a Sam's Club.
And it was also a secret organization because the secrets of ancient stone masonry were such a protected practice right? It's like any sort of manufacturing industry that you have today. You have industry secrets, right? That you don't necessarily want your competitors to have, because if your competitors have it, because then they can go do the exact same thing that you do. So this was the reason for secrecy in ancient stonemasonry, is because stonemasonry was such a reputable craft and such an important craft. Stonemasons literally built ancient civilizations. They were probably the most important craft in the ancient world because they were the ones who literally built the civilization from ground up. So it was a very, very important craft back in the day. And that was the reason for the secrecy. And that is the same reason for the secrecy today. It's just mimicking the traditions of ancient stonemasons. And so these ancient stonemasons within that guild also had that same operational structure. They had lodges where they would meet in the lodges. They would discuss the needs of the fraternity, right? Who's out of work? Who got crushed by a rock this week? Who died in the quarry and we have to go support his wife? Who within the fraternity needs a loan to help them do something, right? What projects do we have scheduled? What buildings are we building? Which one of our people are working on which buildings? Who's designing this? So they had meetings to organize all of the activities of the craft. So that's basically what we do now. So this is the long story short about the history of Freemasonry, right? So the allegory of Freemasonry traces its origin back to the builders of King Solomon's temple. So it was originally these stonemasons. And as stonemasonry moved into like the Renaissance period, gradually individuals started to join that fraternity that were not actual stone masons, right? They were called speculative masons, people who were just interested in the antique knowledge of stonemasons, the craft of stonemasonry, and the prestige of the fraternity. So people started to join, and it gradually started to become less about actually cutting and moving stone and more about speculative esoteric masonry, right? Mm-hmm. And the biggest symbol of Freemasonry in general is the rough stone being transformed into the perfect stone. Okay, so when you cut a stone out of the quarry, it is rough and imperfect. It has all of these superfluities and imperfections. You cannot do anything with a rough stone that is taken out of the quarry. But if you remove all of the imperfections from that stone and make it into a perfect square, you can build something that will last forever. And that is the basic symbolism of Freemasonry. Instead of stones from the quarry, we are living stones, men, attempting to remove all of our vices and superfluities, becoming perfect stones.
Yeah, perfect stones is what's interesting, because that's a group of people deciding what perfect is. And this is what's interesting about what you said. Yes, the rough to polished, and there's a ton of great intentions at the beginnings of any of this stuff, right? No cult starts out going, okay, we're all going to murder each other. Like, they all start wanting to help and wanting to be really good. And this is what's interesting about the human condition and entropy itself, because yes, you'll have an organization start like this, it'll get infiltrated, taken over, and then now you run into my perception and what a lot of people's perception about Masonry is, and we're definitely going to dive into that. What's interesting though about even the analogy that you used is it's like it's a projection of that desire for humanity as a whole to be wrong. Evolved. Well, it
has nothing to do with humanity, and it's not anyone's personal perception of what perfect is. So that's one of the misunderstandings about the Masonic fraternity, is that the symbols are not intended for anyone else's interpretation except for the practitioner.
Okay, and this is why though you get a lot of confusion, because if you're not telling people what's going on, and they're willing to, and so what's interesting is, yes, you want it secret because it's not for everyone, but in that secrecy is going to come speculation from the public. Now, you're fine with that. You don't give a shit, who says what about it, and that's okay too. So, but that's what it is. It's because it's mysterious, it's interesting, and then because of a lot of the symbolism that is openly Masonic connected to a lot of fuckery, that's where you get the question. So there's no kind of answer on the Mason sides except, nope, that's not us, and there's a misunderstanding here. But then also there's a public perception that when people like Jordan Maxwell, which we are going to talk about, write something like The Matrix of Power and come up with all of these reasons or observations of the Masonic overt symbolism being used again in fuckery, in the control of the world. This is the taking the rough stone, which is humanity in the example, and then turning it into its perfect vision of humanity, which is this enslaved population that is perception managed constantly so that the machine can keep moving in an orderly way as they see fit. Now, what's interesting about humanity in general is that there's a natural entropy that occurs with this, and everybody kind of takes their own time, and it's chaotic and disorganized, and there's a lot of energies going on. And so there's not really much order in the chaos. But it sounds like the Masonic institution and all secret societies look to impart their vision of the world, which is subjective, and change the world into what they want to see with it, because it's not good enough for them the way it is. Even though the foundations were pure, and I do not disagree with you on this, there's a lot of stories of it infiltrated in the Catholic Church and how the connections work. All of it can be understood when you look at it, and then you kind of see the direction that Masonic symbolism went.
I would disagree with that. I would say a lot of people don't understand what esoteric Christianity actually is. And if people actually knew the truth about Christianity, they would realize how deep and esoteric of a religion Christianity actually is. Christianity is a modern manufactured religion.
Do not disagree. Do not at all disagree.
It is an astrological compilation of ancient esoteric teachings starting from ancient Egypt. If you Google the connections between Osiris and Jesus, right? Jesus is not an original story. It is an allegory represented for the transformation of man, right? It is also an ancient society that is replicating the ritual of death and resurrection, right? This ancient ritual, they're called rites of passages or rites of initiation. And all of the ancient esoteric mystery societies across the planet, whether it be the Mithraic cults, the cults of Dionysus during the Roman and Greek periods, whether it be the ancient Egyptians, all of these periods had rites of initiation, rites of passage, and rituals of death and resurrection. So Freemasonry also has that very, very same ritual. And Freemasonry is also a compilation of all of these ancient esoteric teachings from many different time periods and many different societies. Depending on whether you're looking at the Blue Lodge teachings or if you're going into the Scottish Rite teachings, there is a whole vast array of different esoteric teachings which have been incorporated into Freemasonry. And that's why it's such a beautiful fraternity, is because of these symbols have such a rich and deep interpretation. And it really is subject to the interpretation of the practitioner, which is what the intention of all esoteric, magical, mystical symbols are. They are for the empowerment of the practitioner, and they can be utilized by the practitioner in however they would like to use them, right? So when people talk about occult and esoteric magic, ceremonial magic, and all these sorts of things, right? That's stuff that does not scare me one bit, right? There's a quote that people often fear what they do not understand. So there's a lot of fear associated with Freemasonry because people don't understand it. They see all these symbols and they don't understand the interpretation. So they're automatically very, very fearful of it. But if you look into the deepest interpretation of those symbols, you will see that there are very, very good spiritual teachings incorporated within Freemasonry. And to kind of comment on your point about Freemasonry wanting to have power or control or develop more energy. Freemasonry does not recruit. There is absolutely no intention of the Freemasonic fraternity to gather more members. And if this organization had some sort of nefarious intention to increase its power or control or the amount of energy that it was developing, right, or the energy that it was accumulating, you would think that they would want to recruit more members. That is absolutely not the case. And Freemasonry does not recruit new members, period. So if you look at my lodge, for example, back in the 70s, my lodge had more than 2,000 members. There are 13 lodges in the upstate area of my state, more than 300 lodges in my state. So we had more than 500,000 Freemasons here during the 70s. If you look at Freemasonry now, my lodge has less than 200 members.
It's because your PR
so where is the nefarious intention for power and control if we are not actively soliciting new people to come into the fraternity?
Well, one would say you already have it. Like, let's say that there's a car, like I don't see a lot of advertisements for Aston Martin because you don't need to. Like the clientele does not need to be advertised to. So one could say that those means have already been achieved and that 100%. That's perhaps the reason is all we're talking about here. Now, something I do not disagree with you at all. And I'm actually so grateful as we're having this conversation, I kind of get a more enlightened kind of perspective about what's actually occurring here. Because, you know, we hear a lot about a lot, okay? And that's part of what we do on the show. We talk about all of it. Now, I've never spoken to you at this depth. We've spoken a lot about it, but you and I have always kind of, whenever it's brought up, say, let's save it for a show. Let's save it for a show. Yeah. Okay, so this is what's so cool about this is you and I are buddies, right? We're going to discuss.
So also think about this before you go, right?
Yeah.
So I am literally the leader of my lodge, right? I personally control and organize all of the activities of my lodge.
Right.
So if there was some sort of nefarious direction of the fraternity, I would certainly be well aware of it because I'm organizing it, right? I'm literally the one involved in making it happen, right?
And I do not discount your credibility for what you are privy to and your knowledge of it. I absolutely do not disagree. Now, I would perhaps speculate that there's things that go on that you're probably not privy to because you don't need to, right? It's not a need to know. All the, millions of people that work for NASA think that they're sending shit to space, but they might not be. And there might be a couple of people at the top that know that, but they need all the workers to think that they're sending shit to space. So, your lodge perhaps is not directed in anything nefarious. Okay, another just real quick that just came to mind. We all use these devices, these Apple devices and phones and shit. And I don't care if you have Android, whatever, it's pretty much the same thing. But we'll just use Apple as an example because I'm the holder of one of those to make the point. So look, I know that, we've heard stories and we've seen how these things are made. I mean, the phone that I've got sitting right here with me, perhaps some poor bastard made this thing and then just took a sky ride out to a suicide net. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that occurs. But at a high level, decisions like that are made, not to treat the workers better, to wrap a net around the building. So when they inevitably jump off to their death or attempt to kill themselves because of the working conditions, that's it. But we still own these phones. We still have these. I still participate in it, right?
So let me ask you a question.
What I mean is if at the top, there's shit that goes on. You at the bottom, though, you, the Apple geek working in the store, are selling an awesome product that a shitload of people want. That's getting a great bunch of feedback. So there's a disconnect from the levels of atrocity that occur within any organization and its employees representing it faithfully and honorably. You see?
So you also have to realize I am at the top of the organization. I'm a 32nd degree in the Scottish Rite.
Right.
So I am almost as high on the totem pole as you can possibly get. Now, one of the assumptions that you are implying about Freemasonry is that it somehow dictates what the members do in their personal or professional lives.
No.
Which it absolutely does not. Right?
No. What I
mean, so let's say NASA, for example, or astronauts, or even Admiral Byrd, for example, right? The guy who goes down to South America,
Freemason.
right?
Yeah.
So there is an assumption and a proposition that the Masonic organization is controlling what these individuals do in their personal life or in their professional life. It's like saying Costco, because somebody is a Costco member. Okay, let's say Neil Armstrong was also a Costco member, right? So because they sent a Costco member up to the moon, does that mean Costco has a nefarious agenda to send people to the moon? No, it just means that Neil Armstrong also happened to be an astronaut in his profession, but also a member of Costco, right? So the same thing about Freemasons being involved in NASA, right? Those individuals were not selected to go to the moon because they were Freemasons. They were selected because they were exceptional candidates in the military. They were pilots and they were trained astronauts. They were not selected because they were Freemasons. Same thing with Admiral Byrd. The Freemasonic fraternity did not send him to Antarctica, right? If he did that, it was on his own volition, and that was something that was done outside of the fraternity. So, for example, my research on Egypt, right? Do you think that Freemasonry in any way controls what I do in my personal life or my research on Egypt?
No. I don't think they control.
So why would anyone assume that anyone else as a member of the Freemasonic fraternity is doing what they do because it is dictated by Freemasonry?
I don't. I think it perhaps could be. I'm not saying any affirmatives. I think it perhaps could be influenced by their dedication to an organization that they have an allegiance to that has a greater idea in mind. And so therefore they're playing their role at an individual level because it's so deep in their core. Think about this. You've got people who are religious, who love the Jesus, that everything they do revolves around that in their personal, professional, everything, because that's the level of dedication and core belief that they have in that organization and idea and that vision. So perhaps, not an absolutes, because I don't deal in those. Maybe one could make the assessment. Plus, everyone that's been to the moon has been a Freemason, by the way. The list of presidents that have been Freemasons, I'm pretty sure it's damn near all of them, and Skull and Bones and Associated.
That's not true either. So just because you hear that people are Freemasons, again, doesn't necessarily mean that is true.
Well, here's the
thing. When you look at people that are in government, for example, right? Just because those people are Freemasons, that does not mean that they were selected for that position because they are Freemasons.
Not an argument.
Again, Freemasonry does not dictate what any of the members do in their personal or professional lives. If anything, those individuals were selected to become members of those prestigious organizations because of the credibility and integrity of the people who are involved in the Masonic fraternity. They are honest, trustworthy individuals who, that when placed in these positions of power, they can be trusted to handle the job. That is one of the teachings of Freemasonry, is honesty, integrity. Have you ever heard the phrase to be on the level with someone?
Yes.
Okay. What does that mean to you?
It means to be equal in vibration, for you to both kind of wink, wink and know exactly what's going on, to be on the level.
It means to be honest, right? To be on the level with someone,
honest with one another,
honesty and transparency, right? So we're both on the same level. That is a teaching directly related to the Masonic fraternity, right? A level is a tool made to make sure that your stones are completely flat, but it also is symbolic of our behavior in our interactions with everyone that we come into contact with. We're all on the exact same level in terms of honesty and transparency.
Right, but you guys have little handshakes that your finger will go out, and that way you know one another is one another, and then you can be on the level with one another. And
that's not how the handshake is either.
Perhaps there's a sub-agenda that there.
Well, so I'm going to be straightforward with you. And when you say something that is incorrect, I'm going to tell you when you are wrong, because I know what the Masonic handshake is. And what you just said about a finger pointing, that has nothing to do with the Masonic handshake.
These things
and
are
another thing. So all of the symbols, right, that are presented as being Mason, like people doing this.
Yes.
You know, when you see that in photos,
that's Illuminati.
Illuminati.
Do you see where we're at with this? So this is why
this is super frustrating. Right?
This is why this conversation is great, because we get a perspective of someone in the fraternity that cares and is passionate about it. Man, you know, you're a worshipful master, for Christ's sake. Don't call me. So anyway, what I'm saying is,
so let me make a point here.
Your perspective is very valuable.
All of the secret signs and symbols of the fraternity, right, of which there are hand gestures and stuff, those are never made in public. Never. So any hand gesture that you see in pictures or whatever, and you have to remember the people, so like actors, right? And people in Hollywood, right? They go to these photo shoots. They aren't the ones picking the things. You know who is? The guy behind the camera, the director. Put your hand like this. Let's do the all-seeing eye, you know, because that's what everybody thinks that this symbol represents. And it has become such a popular symbol in our normal day-to-day life, vernacular, and in all sorts of social media. Everybody knows and loves that symbol, right? It gets traction. It gets clicks, right? And that is what all of those photographers are looking for, is how can I take a picture that's going to get more clicks, get more likes, get more attraction? So they're using these things that appear to be esoteric symbols of secret societies or whatever to simply promote their magazines, right? Or people doing like Jay-Z and this, that, and the other, and it's Illuminati. Dude, all of these rappers back in the 90s, they all had hand gestures for their little crypts, like Wu-Tang, right? This isn't some Illuminati symbol. It's the Wu-Tang symbol. The same thing with Rockefeller, right? That was the symbol of Rockefeller, the Rock. It doesn't have anything to do with the Illuminati. That being said, I'm almost certain that Jay-Z is a Freemason. He is a Prince Hall Mason, but a Freemason nonetheless.
But you can see where, I'm grateful for the perspective that you have being where you are located within the organization because of your perspective. Now, but you can see, though, with all of the people that have done all of the research that they have done on this, that the little things that come out. Now, I don't think anything's on accident.
What research? So for example, right, we were talking about a guy the other day, right, who's supposedly very well versed in research in Freemasonry. Okay. And he was out there spewing nonsense that Aleister Crowley and Madame Blavatsky are members of the Freemasonic fraternity. Okay. First of all, women cannot be Freemasons.
Right.
Ever, period. So anyone telling you that a woman is a member of a Freemason organization, they literally know absolutely nothing about Freemasonry. And there are tons of people out there that, we do all this research on Freemasonry, but then they literally regurgitate the same old factless stuff. None of the research that I have seen on Freemasonry is actually talking about the teachings of Freemasonry. That being said, I've also kind of tagged you and posted you, like sent you little notices on stuff when I do see stuff that is regarding the teachings of Freemasonry. For example, the 2 pillars. Remember, we were talking about the Kabbalah and the 2 pillars and all that kind of stuff. So those sort of teachings are absolutely incorporated in the higher degrees of Freemasonry, like in the Scottish Rites. The teachings of the Scottish Rites go everywhere from Christianity, ancient mystical Judaism. There's also talking about Egypt and the pyramid text and the Book of the Dead. There's all sorts of these ancient esoteric teachings within the Scottish Rites. And so also people think that there's like satanic worship or worship of some sort of thing within Freemasonry. That is also not correct. There is no worship of any deity whatsoever in Freemasonry. There is no worship, period, in Freemasonry.
But what I'm hearing is like what we'd like to hear, but what I'm also hearing is there's a lot of other words that can be used for this. So it's interpreted as worship, but really it's perhaps alignment with the vision of, you know what I mean? Which isn't necessarily worship because perhaps you don't put God above yourself, so you wouldn't worship something above you because it's equal to you, so therefore unity consciousness, and therefore, we don't worship anything. But the G in, Masonic, is that not stand for the Grand Architect, which is synonymous with God? Okay, so then dispel that myth for us, please.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what G means because it is one of the secrets of the Blue Lodge. However, if you look back at ancient stone masonry, right, there were secrets of these stone masons. For example, Pythagorean theorem. Okay. That was a mathematical formula that was known by ancient stone masons. That was not something that was readily known by the public back then. So ancient stone masons were the possessors of this secret ancient knowledge of mathematics, geometry, astrology, right? All of these ancient secrets were how they built these buildings, right? Ancient stonecraft masons were masters of mathematics. Look at the Great Pyramid and all of the sophisticated mathematics that are built into the Great Pyramid. You cannot design that structure without a very, very sophisticated knowledge of advanced mathematics and geometry. So these are the ancient secrets of stonemasons. Those are the exact same secrets of current Freemasons. It's the exact same information. But so no, G does not mean God. It does not mean the grand architect of the universe. And that's just a general phrase to describe how Masons perceive deity, right? So to be a Freemason, you have to believe in God. That is one of the requirements of joining the fraternity, is you have to believe in a higher power. We do not care what religion you are. I'm not even of a religion. I don't aspire to any religion. I believe in God. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it Allah or Jehovah or Buddha or whatever the hell you want to call it. There is only one creator. And it is simply geographical differences that dictate what you call deity, right? Because of the particular allegory of the area that you live in or the historical context of where your religion was developed, regardless of what you call your religion or what you call your deity, there is only one God. So that's why you do have to believe in a higher power to be a Freemason. So there is no direct worship because it's not a religion, but it is a very, very spiritual organization that is predicated upon a belief of God, because that is part of so Freemasonry is about self-improvement. It is not about improvement of the world at large. It is by improving ourselves and improving our individual conduct that we can make changes in the world.
Completely aligned with this.
So here, this is one of my favorite things that I got from the Scottish Rite when I joined the Scottish Rite, and that's the double-headed eagle. And originally, this symbol was not an eagle; it was a phoenix. Okay, and everybody knows what the symbolism of the phoenix is. Of course, resurrection of the spirit, right? Death of the physical and resurrection of the spirit. That is the exact same allegory that is incorporated in the teachings of Christianity. It is death of the physical body, sacrifice of the physical world, and resurrection of the spirit. That is exactly the same teachings that you find in Freemasonry. And there's a quote here on the inside of this thing. And I have my little golden seal and my little golden double-headed eagle. What we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. What we have done for others and the world remains immortal. And that is one of the primary teachings of Freemasonry, is that by being the best individuals that we can possibly be, we can make everlasting changes within the world simply by being better people. So it's not about trying to change the world. There is no agenda for world change. It is simply by changing each individual that we can go out and make changes in the world by being better men. And that's the same teachings as all of ancient esoteric teachings, like these rites of initiation and rites of passage in the ancient world were designed to turn men into the people that they were always meant to be. And that is what the intention of Freemasonry is.
You know, no one would disagree with these tenets. No one would disagree with the satanic commandments of the satanic Bible. 0% of people would disagree with these things. And we're not saying that anything that you said here is inaccurate or wrong or unjustified to warrant some interest. I mean, that's amazing. It's like a religion, but not. It's a motivative experience here that you have the option to participate in with other people who are wanting to better themselves as well. Now, again, Disney at the very top has probably got some crazy shit going on. I'm not saying that, you know, that doesn't happen. And maybe there's some dark rooms and maybe there's a couple levels above what
So
you're
Disney
at.
was not a Mason either. Everybody thinks that Disney was a Freemason. He was a member of the Demolay. He was not initiated into Blue Lodge Freemasonry.
Yeah, but this is like saying, yeah, my wife didn't get my campaign contributions, but her publishing house did. You know what I'm saying? It's passing around contracts for under the same, like, again, it's semantics. One could absolutely view that as semantics, dude. So either way, though, let's say,
well, it's not though. So, for example, like that guy saying that Aleister Crowley was a Freemason.
Maybe.
Okay, those are not semantics. That is an absolute lie. Right? That is 100% factless. Aleister Crowley was not a Freemason. Aleister Crowley was a member of the Golden Dawn.
Right.
Now, the Golden Dawn was started by Freemasons. And the Golden Dawn is a society of ceremonial esoteric magic. That is a completely different thing than Freemasonry. Some
Perhaps.
similar stuff here and there, right? But a completely different organization with completely different intentions and goals.
Okay, but there is this thing called vertical integration, which is really what I think we're talking about here. In a business model, let's say, I heard an awesome example on 30 Rock years ago, and this is just an awesome way to put this. So let's say that there's a particular chip company that makes potato chips or whatever, but they give you horrible diarrhea. But instead of taking them off the market, what they do is they just invent and invest in a diarrhea medicine, and they insert little samples of it in the bag of chips. So now you're making money on both ends, literally, the mouth and the asshole, right? And so this is vertical integration. So let's say that the Golden Dawn established by a Freemasonic order in some respects isn't now directly connected. They're like, all right, look, you know, your monies can't come through this tax ID. So we're going to start you your own. We're still going to hang out. We're still on the level. Okay, cool. And then they progress to do this in other ways. And now it's so fractured and split and convoluted that it, you know, will have a guy like you going, man, I'm part of this damn thing and it's amazing and they could do no wrong, but perhaps, Geoff, just fucking perhaps, guy, there is some dark shit going on in this that you're not privy to. I mean, perhaps, right? We have to say this in all. I don't know that my wife doesn't get up and go murder people in the middle of the night while I'm sleeping. I can't rule it out. What I'm saying is there's a possibility that there's some shit going on that may be unsightly and maybe guiding humanity, albeit with great intentions, in a way that would be perceived as nauseating.
So let me explain the organization of Freemasonry and why it directly contradicts the idea that there is some sort of central power or central control. Okay, so Freemasonry is not a global organization, period. There is zero central global body that dictates what Freemasons do across the world. It does not exist. There is no central power. Freemasonry is organized into a system of blue lodges that operate completely independently within their local Grand Lodge. So the Grand Lodge is the highest organization within Freemasonry. So each state within the United States has a Grand Lodge. Those states are not controlled by a central power that says, okay, all of the Grand Lodges are going to do this. It is a philosophy that is practiced globally, but is completely operated locally. And the people who developed the fraternity did that very, very intentionally so that there would never be a central power or central control within the fraternity, because there is absolutely no point in having it, because there is no global or centralized intention for the fraternity. It is simply a philosophy and a way of living your life. There is no organizing body that would be able to say, we're the ones at the top of the pyramid. We're the ones controlling the dissemination of order. That doesn't exist. There are other organizations that have centralized power and centralized control. And those people at the top are very, very interested in manipulating everything that happens within the body of that pyramid. That is not the case with Freemasonry. So then if you go into the higher degrees of Freemasonry, the Scottish Rite, for example, there is the House of the Temple of the 33rd degree, which is a national U.S. body for 33rd degree Masons in the Scottish Rite. But that group is not controlled by a global central body. So literally the structure of Freemasonry prevents the establishment of centers of control. Now, that being said, what people do in their own personal life outside of the fraternity is completely outside of the fraternity. And Freemasonry is a beacon for people that are interested in the esoteric and the occult and the weird. So it is literally a fraternity that draws these people in. Me, for example, I remember when I was 16 years old and I first got my driver's permit, and I was driving around and I saw the square and compass on the back of somebody's car. And I had no idea what it was at the time, but I knew that when I was 16, I was like, I want that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it means, but something about that symbol resonates with me. My name starts with a G, and I always used to draw letter G and like all these big letter G's all over my work. So for whatever reason, that symbol resonated directly with me. And the symbols of Freemasonry call these people that are interested in esoteric spiritual practices. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that the fraternity isn't a beacon for these individuals. So me and a bunch of like-minded buddies that are all Freemasons, we could get together and do something outside of the lodge, right? 100%. Same thing with the guys that started the Golden Dawn. The reason they started the Golden Dawn is because they were not satisfied with the esoteric teachings of Freemasonry. There is so much deeper stuff. Freemasonry is a very superficial esoteric society where it has some important teachings, but there's so much more down the rabbit hole. So that's why these guys broke off and started the Golden Dawn, because they wanted to do ceremonial magic. And ceremonial magic is not a part of Freemasonry. And they didn't find what they were looking for within the fraternity. So they went and started something else that's completely different. Like Skull and Bones, for example. Skull and Bones is not a sanctioned Freemasonic organization, but it was started by Freemasons who did something on the side.
Yeah, a little side
because they were
project.
all members, like Costco, for example. Oh, we all shop at Costco. I run into these guys and they all have symbols on their shirts and we all got weird tattoos and we're all interested in esoteric. So we're going to talk at Costco, right? Put our heads together. And then we're going to go out in our own personal lives and do something else. I will not sit here and say that does not happen within Freemasonry.
There it is.
Because it's a gathering place for people that are interested in deep esoteric teachings. So like what I do on my personal, again, me going to Egypt, that has absolutely nothing to do with the fraternity. But if I wanted to get a bunch of people together that were all Freemasons and go to Egypt, I could start my Egyptian whatever cult, and people, it's a Freemasonic organization and Freemasonics are trying to control the function of the Egyptian pyramids. Well, no, it's just I decided to do that in my personal life. And I also happen to be a member of Freemasonry. So again, what people do in their personal and their professional life is in no way dictated by the teachings of Freemasonry. And just because someone is a Freemason doesn't mean that what they're involved in, it may be evil. I'm not going to sit here and say that evil people are not members of Freemasonry. Same way of Christianity, right? Christianity is not without people who have evil intentions. Just because you're a member of a good organization doesn't mean you're necessarily a good person. That doesn't reflect on the intentions or the teachings of the fraternity itself. So I am very, very cautious when people assign certain intentions to the fraternity at large when it is literally the individuals that are associated. So people, oh, this guy is evil and he's a Freemason, therefore the fraternity is evil. That's not right, because that individual is doing something independently of the fraternity itself.
But that's maybe perhaps built in from someone like with a perception that I've got sitting here thinking, okay, well, it's like that fall on your sword idea. It's like, look, you have nothing to do. You disavow the Mission Impossible idea. We disavow all knowledge of you and your team if you're caught, and that's kind of what it seems. But maybe perhaps there is a dope handshake that occurs in a meeting afterwards when some shit like that goes down and they find out that individual who on their personal time went out and did their own personal thing that had nothing to do with the fraternity, because wink, wink, it would never. But what I'm saying is let's say perhaps that's something, and I absolutely see your point, man. I absolutely see it. And perhaps I am curious when you're going to roll your cult out, though. That sounds awesome, and I definitely want one of the T-shirts whenever you do that. But whenever, somebody looks at something like this and you see the G and you see all of the different symbolism that
if I told you what the G meant, and I've already said the word, I've already told you have, because you do. I've already told you what G means and you didn't even hear it.
No, I heard it.
So if I told you what it meant, you would be like, are you serious?
Well,
it's so innocent and innocuous that if I were to tell you that, you wouldn't even believe me. You would be like, there's no way that's what it is.
Well, and it honestly doesn't, I think, matter other than my curiosity and what it means to Masons, right? So here's the thing. Perhaps, and again, just perhaps, you go into an organization, you go, okay, here's a bunch of things that, you agree with this, right? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, you agree with this also, right? And they're like, yeah, we do agree with that. And they're like, okay, well, go out on your own and go do your thing. And to say that it doesn't reflect that I'm viewing this, let's say nefarious actions take place on behalf of the Masons, even though they're not an evil organization, let's just say one or two have occurred because of some secret handshake meetings that even aren't in the doctrine that you're not aware of and all of that good stuff. Perhaps. What this is equivalent to is contractors working for the U.S. government to go overthrow countries. No, it wasn't the U.S. government. No, it wasn't us. The U.S. government isn't evil. We would never do that. A contractor paid through or in a handshake organization that aligns with the values of that organization, be it for financial gain, power, whatever, then they may go enact the will of a party that doesn't want to be associated with that act. So it happened unbeknownst to them, right? Oh, no. We have our alibis in place. We would never do that. They were acting on their own, is all I'm saying. Like, we can't rule out that maybe, just maybe, there's a Rolls-Royce ride from an airport to a speech one day, and that they happen to be in there, and that some shit goes down in that car, and then maybe a government gets overthrown, and that guy's nephew now, is the leader of that country. I mean, who knows? It is absolutely fascinating, though, because if you even apply this to, let's just say a fraternity in college, I know 0% of lambda astronauts. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's amazing that all of these people who have all these super dope jobs were from the same fraternity. It's just interesting. Or subsidiaries of the same fraternity, which in my mind...
You also have to remember that during that time period, in the 50s to the 70s in the United States, everyone was a Freemason. If you were a man in the 50s and 70s, the percentage of people involved in Freemasonry was so high, especially in the military. Freemasonry was huge in the military organizations during that time period. So, of course, all of those individuals were going to be in important positions within NASA and astronauts and all this stuff. Again, those guys were not picked to be astronauts because they were Freemasons. They were picked because of their qualifications. They just also happened to be members of an esoteric fraternity that was interested in this type of stuff.
That perhaps gave them the opportunities to gain the qualifications necessary to be the top picks for that rank.
So how would Freemasonry give somebody qualifications within the military?
Well, Bill Gates' mom got him his first job and hooked up against the computer IBM's owner. Didn't want to do it, but she was banging the owner, and so got him the job, and that's how he got his foot in the door. And
I thought you were talking about like their actual performance in the military, like, you know, like their physical performance and their physical capabilities, right?
Well,
that's the reason that these people were picked to be astronauts.
That's so easy to fake. If we rely on the accuracy of anyone involved, because I'm thinking of like an organization like Hydra. It's infiltrated everything, down to the secretary, down to the guy that takes the trash out on a certain day, the guy filling out the paperwork that says, yeah, you pass. We've all seen James Bond. He wasn't physically fit for service, but they let him go anyway because it was in the script. It's in the movie. This is the thing. You can't verify that shit. I mean, you can look at it and go, you know, perhaps it's a good metric, and then that's good enough for some people. For me, it's not, because that can be easily faked. People can be bought. Anyone in an organization can be infiltrated into any old job because they're owned at the top, you know? And so they're like, yeah, We'll make your boy the driver that week and make some shit go down.
So let's flip the script, right? I guarantee you that all of those astronauts were also Christians. I would almost guarantee you that almost all of our politicians are involved in Christianity.
Oh, hell right? No. They use Christianity as a scapegoat to gain public attention. I will agree with that, but I do not for 1 minute think that those people agree with the tenets of Christianity and follow it to the letter. Not one.
Well, no, all I'm saying is, right, so just because someone is a member of an organization, right? So like Neil Armstrong. Okay, so did the Catholic Church send people to the moon?
Absolutely. If the moon's a place
to
go.
I know, right? Yeah, absolutely.
If the moon's a place to go,
so
then absolutely.
These people are also members of other organizations, but people select Freemason. Freemasonry is the scapegoat, dude.
Well, right. No. Now,
because it is a secret organization and because it's members. So one of the teachings of Freemasonry, right? There's a great quote by Voltaire is, I never make the mistake of arguing with someone for whose opinion I have no respect. And Freemasons very, very much adhere to that doctrine. So if somebody is going to argue with me about the teachings of Freemasonry, I am not even going to engage in that conversation. I will allow them to believe whatever it is that they want to believe about the fraternity, and I will simply walk away because I know the truth, and I'm not going to waste my energy arguing with someone who I'm not here to try to convince you of anything. I'm not here to try to convince anybody to believe anything about the Masonic fraternity. If anything, I encourage you to pick up a freaking book, not you, the viewers at large, right?
Pick good one to start with
about Freemasonry.
Matrix of Power by Jordan Maxwell. This has got great Masonic information in it. If you want to check it out, guys.
We'll get a teachings of all ages.
There you go.
Right.
I'll link them.
This is the book that people need to read. If you are interested in the lineage and the development of esoteric societies on this planet, this is the book. It is thousands and thousands of pages, and you will see there is yellow highlights all throughout this entire book. I have read this thing literally cover to cover, every single page in this book, and it details the lineage and the development of these mystery schools. Freemasonry is nothing new, and the teachings of Freemasonry are nothing new. And human beings on this planet have been involved in these ancient esoteric rituals of death and resurrection for millennia. It is part of what human beings have done on this planet for ages and ages and ages. There is nothing new about the teachings of Freemasonry. So again, I don't see where people are getting this evil interpretation about the intentions of the fraternity when it was never, ever that. Never in all of our history have any of the mystery schools or rites of passage or initiation been associated as evil. The only reason we have it today is because of the propaganda that is associated by the Catholic Church. Christianity does not like anything that has power outside of the church. And Freemasonry has always been directly in conflict with the power of the church. In government, in politics, in social influence, Freemasonry and the church have always been in direct contact. Church does not include or encourage a direct relationship with God. Freemasonry does.
What you touched on here is very, very important, because the infiltration first began with the church infiltrating Freemasons and then overtaking. So this is what...
That's not true either.
Well, the perspectives and the stories, that's what they say. That's what some people lean on, is that the church was the one that infiltrated, and that's the one perpetrating as Masonic and doing all of the shit and pointing it towards Masons, but they're really the ones doing the evil shit, and we're pointing directly at the Catholic Church here. And so this is the idea that the church, the Catholic higher-ups hopped in, a bunch of bishops infiltrated the Masonic order, and over time was able to gain secrets, gain their methodologies and symbologies, and then apply them to acts of disobedience toward the order.
If you are looking for the most centralized, powerful, energy-seeking organization on the planet that is completely protected from all of the laws on the entire planet, it is completely independent in terms of its operation and politics. There is an untouchable city that has vast amounts of power and control, has absolutely nothing to do with Freemasonry, and you know exactly what it is.
Yeah, Vatican.
And they are the hiders of the deepest secrets on this planet. It has absolutely nothing to do with Freemasonry. I'm not going to point any fingers, but we all know exactly where that system of control actually comes from. And this is unfortunately the dissemination. So Freemasonic symbols can so easily be misinterpreted and spread as being evil symbols. People look at a pentacle, like a 5, a pentagram, you turn it upside down and put a circle around it, and everybody thinks it's Satanism. Well, a pentacle has absolutely nothing to do with Satanism. It has to do with the 5 elements: earth, air, fire, water, spirit. And whether you turn it up or turn it down, it's either masculine or feminine, period. But people will automatically turn that into some sort of satanic interpretation and imply that Freemasonry is a satanic organization, where it has absolutely nothing to do with that whatsoever. And that is certainly not the interpretation of the symbols. So let me give you an interpretation, the deepest esoteric interpretation of the square and compass. So I am about to reveal a huge Masonic secret. And the reason that I can do this is because it is not taught anywhere in Blue Lodge or Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The only thing that is secret in Freemasonry is what is it written in the Red Book. And I can go get my Red Book. It's out in my front office. So it's a little tiny book, and the entire thing is written in code. I could give you that book, and you would have no idea what that freaking book says. And it is literally the ritual that we use in the lodge. And by ritual, I simply mean the script for the play, right? So opening and closing the lodge, there's a certain way that we do it. It's a procedure for opening and closing the lodge. Same thing with the degrees. There is a script for the degrees. It's very much like a play where everyone plays a different role in the play, and you have a script. And everything has to be done by memory. There is no reading anything when you're doing the play. Everything is memorized. And I just did a 3rd degree where I was playing the part of King Solomon in the 3rd degree. And it's a lot of stuff to learn, and it's all in the Red Book. The stuff in the Red Book is the only secret. And the reason that ritual is secret is to protect the integrity of the ritual, so it cannot be copied. Anytime you make a copy of something, the integrity of the original gets lost the more you pass it down. That is the reason for keeping the ritual secret. So that being said, when people hear the word ritual, they're like, oh, satanic ritual. Ritual means evil. Well, no, there's rituals in Christianity. And I would say that the rituals of Christianity are much stranger than the rituals of Freemasonry. the ritual of transmutation of the Eucharist and eating the blood and flesh of your deity is a very, very strange ritual for an onlooker who is not familiar with the teachings of Christianity. So if I had no idea what Christianity was and I go into a church and they're and the censers and the smoke and okay, now all of a sudden we're going to transform this blood into wine and we're going to eat the flesh. And I'd be like, what the fuck? You guys are eating the flesh. You're going to transform bread into flesh and then you're going to eat it. And what is this bloody guy hanging on the cross? And like, what is all this shit? Right. There's very, very strange symbols and rituals in Christianity. Well, none of Freemasons ain't eating flesh and drinking blood. If you're looking for that in the Freemasonic ritual, you will be very, very disappointed. And that being said, myself, as someone who is very adept in ceremonial magic and other esoteric practices, I was looking for that, dude. I wanted it. I joined Freemasonry looking for that deep esoteric practices. I want to do. I'm all in. Sign me up. In my ancient manifestation, I know I would have 100% been a member of some mystery ancient cult.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And it has called to me since I was a young man. So I'm not afraid of these symbols. I'm not afraid of ceremonial magic. I've practiced ceremonial magic. I've done it all. So none of that stuff scares me. So that being said, back to the square and the compass, right? So this tattoo on my forearm is Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. And people may say that Da Vinci was also a Freemason. I can't verify that. It's possible. We don't know that for sure. But in this symbol, you have a square and a circle. So what are the square and the compass other than representations of a square and a circle? So the square is an ancient esoteric symbol for the physical world and the material body. The circle is an ancient symbol for the spiritual world and the spiritual body. Well, if you look at the man in the center of the Vitruvian Man, he is simultaneously touching the square and the circle. So what does that mean? Man simultaneously inhabits a physical body here in the physical world, but simultaneously is a part of the spiritual world and the spiritual body. Okay, so that is a deep, deep esoteric interpretation of the Masonic square and compass. But that's not an interpretation that you would hear anywhere in the Blue Lodge, nor would you hear that interpretation anywhere in the Scottish Rites. You have to dig very, very deep into these symbols and retrieve the significance. These symbols are made to empower the practitioner, right? So my ring, my Masonic ring, I wear this symbol facing me. I don't wear it facing outward because it is not a symbol intended for public consumption. If anything, that is a symbol for my personal reflection. And that when I look down at that symbol, I know what it means to me, and it empowers me to become the absolute best person that I can possibly be. So that is the intention of these symbols, or with any esoteric symbol, is to help empower the practitioner. Same thing with any magic symbols. You know what a sigil is?
Yeah.
So a sigil is basically a symbol that you create with intention that is supposed to help you manifest a certain outcome. That is what ceremonial magic is about. So I can't say that those two things, Freemasonry and ceremonial magic, are completely independent, because there is usage of symbols, right? But that's something that is an ancient esoteric practice on this planet. There is no nefarious intention with that. So that being said, ceremonial magic, for example, that is a practice that a lot of people will associate as being evil. Ceremonial magic is evil. Ceremonial magic is not evil. It is the intention of the practitioner and the intention of that will, right? Where is that energy going? So again, when people imply that Freemasonry has some sort of global intention, that is absolutely not the case. It is simply to improve and betterment of each individual in the fraternity. There is no global intention. I can't say that about some other practices out there.
You know, what's so interesting, man, is as you're talking about this, you know, the play, the ritual, it's more like a play. And I agree with this. I think that a play is probably exactly what's going on with your interpretation of what you're experiencing in your fraternity, but also perhaps that's a microcosm of the play that's being enacted on a global stage, which would be this idea of that, yeah, maybe the church is evil and doing a bunch of crazy shit disguised as something enlightening, and it's not. But perhaps that's the flip coin of the organization that is total something connected to the Freemasons. Maybe that's a Baphomet idea. Maybe this is a good and bad. Maybe this is a heads and tails, dark and light, and they facilitate a play here by playing two sides of everything and kind of really perception managing the entire society at a level. But then you always have the, no, it's for good. And I'm sure a lot of great is done out of it, and probably good is done from the whole, because if I zoom out from that and you look at things like what happened in 2020, what's happening on a big level, I think it's facilitating the expansion of consciousness. So who's to say that the Catholic Church or the Freemasons or anyone else doesn't feel that they have a very important role to play in the expansion of consciousness, and the intent behind it may be just that. Now, I see this from a high level as all being connected and all being necessary, okay, just from the point of perspective I'm at now. But we can't rule out that perhaps there's some fuckery going on that you're not privy to, because I can't rule that out again. My wife could be doing some shit. I don't know. I'm not around her all the time is what I'm saying. Now, also, I think that there's some wonderful things in the organization in the same way that I think that church and religions have value by providing this compass for you. If you need that, then this is just another version of that, but in a really cool and interesting way.
Oh, you just said another one. It just provides a what?
What?
It provides a what for you?
I was in stream. What did I say?
It provides a compass.
Well, not for me, but for
but it provides a what? A compass,
yeah,
right?
It's a compass.
A square and a compass.
Yeah. And this is what I'm saying. It's connected in a way that it's necessary for for your experience to transpire. But I'm not saying, and absolutely never going to rule out, because there are some interesting symbolisms in the form of colors that you presented here. The red book, the blue lodge. Okay, now we're talking red and blue. That's pervasive.
The red
in a lot
book,
of things.
it's also, it just depends on the color of the out. It's just red here in my state, and it's not the technical term for it.
Okay, but the two differentiating colors in those forms, blue lodges, well, blue pilling, is the masses perception, right? That's what you show to everyone. The red pill is actually what you take to gain the knowledge of the actual truth going on, which could manifest in the form of the play that you just did, which I'm sure your performance was crushing. I would love to see that, any little bit of it. Don't give the whole thing away, but I'd like to see your performance on it either way. But what I'm saying is that there's, again, a lot of iconography where there's a face that's shown and then things that are not. Now, due to the intent and motive, whether you're aware of it or not, perhaps there's something deeper going on, right? I mean, perhaps there's deeper shit that going on than any of us know about. But when I look at this as like the church is over here and we're over here and we're not buddies, we're kind of rivals, well, that's an automatic for me, because Republicans and Democrats claim to be rivals, but I know that they're owned by the same people. There's a lot going on here where both sides play one another, and I'm not ruling out that the Masons play a role in something going on that perhaps they're doing altruistically. And maybe they think that they are. Again, NASA employees think that they built shit to go to space, and maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But what I'm saying is that the intent of the energy at the levels of any level in Masonic that you're at, there's still this personal component. And this, like, yes, we're all together. Well, people in fraternities and stuff will hire someone in their fraternity for their organization or for their company. Maybe it's just an oil company or something. It doesn't have to be nefarious. Sure. And they'll do that, though, because of the association and understandings they feel like that they already, and the connection they feel they already have with this person. So it gains familiarity. So there's a lot of rapport in being a Mason and running around out there, which, again, nothing nefarious to that. But let's say that some of those connections, and we can't rule it out, have been utilized to connect some pretty fucked up things and to do some pretty shitty deals.
Again, all stuff that is happening independent of the fraternity. So again, you're associating the intent of an individual with the intent of an organization, and that is incorrect.
Just saying it's possible. The organization is...
It would be the same thing as like Costco, right?
Right.
Just because a bunch of people are members of Costco and they get together on their own and do something doesn't mean that Costco is a nefarious organization that has some sort of intent.
No,
right?
Of course not. Of course not.
So I can't make that point enough, is that what people do in their own personal and professional life has absolutely nothing to do with the intention of the organization.
Right. And I can't make the point enough that that's perhaps an awesome opportunity for them not to be responsible for some shit that's some wink, wink handshakes because they were in the organization. So it's not necessarily due to...
Again, what you're saying there with wink, wink handshake, you're implying that Freemasonry is dictating this agreement between these individuals.
Not Freemasonry,
that's not the
just
case.
the fact that they work at Costco together. The fact that they work at Costco, there's a common bond there. There's a culture. There's a but they kind of do things again.
But also,
guys, we can't rule that out.
Give me an example of something evil that Freemasonry has done.
Well, it's interesting the iconography used. And so here's what I really wanted to step on and touch on actually at this point. This is perfect. So what is interesting is all of the Masonic symbolism in or Illuminati and all of these things, which again, there's a very tough distinction if
Illuminati doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. So let's say that the symbolism that the Masons do have is being apprehended and used in some pretty interesting ways to guide the perception of humanity.
So give me an example and let's pull it up and let's look at it.
Black and white checkered floors.
Okay, what about it?
That is used in a lot of things, and it usually denotes a Masonic connection. And what's the Masonic connection with the black and white floor?
I will say one of the principles of the manifestation of the universe, right? The 7 principles of Hermetic philosophy are related to the duality of the universe.
Right.
That is simply the nature of the manifestation, positive and negative, light and dark, good and evil, hot and cold. That is the way that 3-dimensional reality is created by the adhesion of polar opposites. Now we're getting into something very, very deep related to quantum physics and the transformation from spirit and consciousness into 3-dimensional matter, which is exactly what is discussed in the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah. So now we're getting into very, very deep teachings of not only Scottish rites, but also of the deepest esoteric teachings on the planet. So that has nothing to do with the good and evil intentions of Freemasonry. That is a description of the manifestation of the universe. That is an absolute truism of the way this universe manifests, is that you cannot have light without dark.
Just want to take a moment and thank Geoff Drumm for coming by and hanging out with us for that awesome conversation. Many, many more like it probably will be had. So if you guys had any additional questions or anything like that you'd like to write in, do so at the link that reads expandingrealitypodcast.com in the show notes down there, and I will make sure that those get included in the next one. Also, all the ways to find Geoff are going to be located in the show notes as well. You guys know me better than that. But down there also, I'm going to go ahead and link a couple of books that we referenced here. Now, he referenced mainly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. That's down there as well. Also, The Matrix of Power by Jordan Maxwell. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and throw that one in for a fair and balanced look at this from a different angle. So there you go. All those are in the show notes. While you're down there, check out all of our affiliate links, guys. They're incredibly helpful. You've got Food Forest Abundance. You've got Opus. You've got Red Circle if you want to start your own podcast. And then, of course, the Manifestor's Guide. Really step your game up. Do Expanding Reality, all caps, no spaces, at checkout for an even sweeter deal on that. Now, while you're down there as well, check out expandingrealitypodcast.com. That's where you can submit that question, by the way, for Geoff. Also, while you're over there, sign up to become an Expansive Insider. That is going to be the best way to support the show. There's bonus material associated with that. As well, if you just want to take part in the value exchange model that we've got going on here, there is a link down there that reads Support the Mission, and that is how you get in contact with that. And thank you guys so much for your support. It's all incredible, and I'm incredibly grateful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, guys, so go out into this incredibly beautiful place, whatever the hell this thing is, and y'all just be good to everybody that you come across. Be nice to everybody that you see. You might as well. Also, while you're doing all that, pick up a piece of litter. While you're just crushing it at life in general, get out of the left-hand lane. If you really want to step that game up, go ahead and buy somebody a coffee or a meal in line around you. And that would be an awesome way to do it. That's just a great way to start your day right there, guys. So I guess the message to take away from all of that is to go out into this mysteriously amazing place, whatever the hell this thing is. And y'all just be good to one another. Thank you so much for listening, watching, engaging, and just being the coolest sons of bitches ever. We'll see you next time.